Hey, everybody. Welcome to the February 4th, 2026 Charter Review Special Committee. I'm Ryan Dorsey. I'm the chair. With us, we have our vice chair, Councilman John Bullock, members of the committee, Councilwoman Odette Ramos, Councilmember Zach Blanchard. We have folks from the law department, the comptroller's office, the council president's office, the Department of Legislative Reference, the mayor's office, and the Office of Council Services. You have a bunch of documents in front of you. Thank you to Ethan, our staff member, for preparing a lot printed for us today, including a written agenda. I just want to start by reviewing the agenda very quickly. Among your documents, there are printouts of kind of a working draft document that Ethan and I have been slogging through for Article 7, as well as one for Article 8. Councilman Jones, how you doing? We have Councilman Jones with us. Article 7, the executive departments, and Article 8, the franchises article. You also have the spreadsheet that was requested, discussed last time. It's just a more coherent, concise way of compiling all of the topics that we have discussed. It needs to be fleshed out a little bit more, but I think it just is a lot more digestible to see things in there. I want to start by reviewing that just quickly, just for folks to understand the way we organized it. So the second column is topic. Obviously, these are the topic headlines that we've used to review a bunch of different points of discussion, and a general description of it to the right of that. And then after that status, the status column is where I believe we've landed with each of these topics to this point, identifying ones that we feel confident in going forward with as proposals for the 2026 election. Ones that are some things that we agree we want to do, but that like term limits is something that seems to be more a 2028 endeavor. Things like redistricting reform that I think we agree there's merit to, but is definitely not 2026 and not necessarily 2028. So I've just marked that as not 2026. It's something that's on the table, but just we don't need to spend further time going through it at this time. There are several that are marked as undecided, as just topics that we are, I think, all anticipating some further discussion on, including the composition of the Board of Estimates, the matter of capital budget reform, and the matters pertaining to the Department of Legislative Reference and the Office of Council Services. And then there are notes about things that came up but were kind of removed from discussion, or are redundant of other things, or are not determined not to be charter material, and or kind of not ready to have any more serious discussion about at this time, where we would need somebody else outside of this committee to be motivated to explain to us why they think we should take something up. So that's the general organization of this. And then as far as we have discussed kind of to date, in the far left corner, we've put names to several proposals. BOE slash budget slash BOE slash mayor, because for ones that pertain to the budget and other things that we want to remove from or amend in the Board of Estimates article, where the budget is presently and where the budget is needing to be pulled out of that and be included in this new article, and the proposal to amend details pertaining to veto process and as well as the timing of the budget, but then necessarily the timing of veto and veto override pertaining to the budget, and then veto and veto override in general, all comes in the mayoral article. So one proposal that is intended to encompass a whole bunch of different topics pertaining to those existing or new proposed article, budget, BOE, mayor. One for the controller, one for the executive branch, which I want to talk through today, and one for franchises, which, if time allows, we'll talk through today. Then there's one that's marked as audit timing. Need to look more closely at where that needs to be. I just didn't have time to find an answer for that. And despite the fact that these are all enumerated as like kind of different proposals at this time, there's nothing to say that we might not resolve at some point to say everything should just be one proposal, right? I'm not certain that we want, and I think this needs to be a topic of consideration and discussion, is do we want to put 4 or 5 different questions on the ballot, or does it make more sense for us to come out with one big recommendation for changes, put it all into one thing, and combine these things at some point? But for right now, I have working documents that are organized in this way: budget, BOE, mayor, executive, franchises, controller, different separate things as working ways of dividing this up. So I just wanted to give you my sense of, just a little bit about how this sheet is organized, so that as you review it on your own, that's all understood. As has been our MO, we want to review any new topics that have come up. First, I'll ask, anybody here have any new topics that have come up that they want to put out here for us today? Do we have anything coming in that has come in through the email account?
Yes, there are 2 emails that we've received from the previous meeting.
What is that email address again?
That email address is charter.review.committee@baltimorecity.gov. charter.review.committee@baltimorecity.gov. The 2 emails that we have received from our last meeting, the first relates to generally the Board of Estimates and budget process. It's similar to some of what the committee has discussed to date. It has 3 kind of main components. The first is to eliminate the Board of Estimates, moving its fiscal and budgetary authority to the City Council and procurement authority to a division within the Department of Finance. The second is to require that the budget is passed as ordinary legislation and to remove the mayor's line item veto power. And the third is to provide the council with adequate and professional budget staff. The second proposal that we've received is to create a process by which a vacancy on the city council is filled via a special election as opposed to a choice by the membership.
Okay. These topics are noted as we have done before. We just note these topics as they've come in at the top of our meeting here, and determine that if we want to take up more deep discussion of them, they're on the table. We take up discussion at a later time. Cool. Glad to hear we have topics still coming in. I'm hoping that we continue to have topics, ideas, concerns coming in as we conduct public outreach at the meetings that we have coming up in different places throughout the city over the next couple of months. We don't have anybody here in attendance from the public today. We did have somebody the last meeting, so we did hear from them. We left time for them at the end, but I don't want to make people sit through our whole discussion here if they don't want to. But we don't have anybody here today. I was going to do public comments here. Do we have anybody online? No? Okay. Just him. Who are our 6 attendees? Oh, good. Do we have anybody? It's just staff and Fox 45. Okay. All right. It's not a press conference. Look, unless they want to take a 5-minute break from their reporting duties to just be citizens of the city of Baltimore and give public comment on charter topics, we'll move on. There are some people we just shouldn't invite. So before I move on to continuing to run my mouth, anything else, anybody? I just want to carve out a little extra space here between items 3 and 4 on our agenda, which we're sailing through here. Before we dive into Article 7, anything burning here for anybody that they need the committee to hear about real quick?
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to let the committee know what you and I had talked about, that
Yes.
I'm working on written proposals for the capital budget side and the DLR piece. They're not ready for today, but I will try to have them for whenever you want to put them on the agenda so that we can take a look ahead of time and discuss those. So I am working on those. Obviously, we have to talk to DLR about the DLR proposal first before discussing it here. But I wanted to just make sure the committee was aware that that was my plan based on what we talked about.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. One, because there was several things in that first public feedback thing. Do we have access to the public inputs?
Yes, those are all available on the bill file on Legistar.
Okay, awesome. And also just making a note, speaking of like budgeting process and stuff, my request to have some sort of input from the mayor's office is as to like what they think the appropriate process should look like and what those adjustments should be. I think Tylor had made a comment that the city administrator had some recommendations and whatnot, and I would like to see those as we're having this conversation.
I mean, as just topics for consideration, things they want changed in the charter.
Yeah, my sense was that they have like kind of a bigger picture idea of what they would be going for, and it would be, as we're having this conversation, it would be helpful to know.
Yeah.
You know, we can take it for whatever it's worth, but it would be good to know what they think should.
We did have things shared with us, right? They did have procurement, the Board of Estimates procurement, really stifles our ability to do procurement. What's in the charter there, and so we're planning to, I think, propose to just take that out of that article. Also, we had discussion about minor privilege permits. That was another thing that was, if not derived from the mayor's office and the city administrator, it was at least something of common interest, shared interest. And I think there were a couple of other things probably that were of kind of generally shared interest. I can also say through having a lot of conversations with various folks, I think there is general shared interest in making things simpler. And that's kind of the crux of what I want to go into with Article 7 today. This is the first.
Mr. Chair, before we go into
Yes.
the agenda, are we going to dedicate just the one meeting to talk about the BOE budget stuff? Because it's all, as we were talking about earlier, kind of folded together, that if we're going to do one, it has impacts on kind of a lot of different things.
Yeah. I'll just say I've tried in my role as the chair to hear everything that we're all discussing here, and then make it my duty to like take the next step to initialize like compiling that into a draft document, a working document. I have that for Board of Estimates, budget, veto stuff. That is not as neatly compiled together yet as the things that I have here today.
Mhm.
So I think that, like, I think as we go through this, we'll go through I bring Article 7 particularly today because in looking through our spreadsheet, in looking at our topics, this the most, I think, generically framed one of them is overly prescriptive provisions. We haven't really had any constructive conversation about what that means. And while there is a bunch of like extra stuff in a lot of places in the charter, it is really in this Article 7 where there is a lot of extra stuff. And so I bring Article 7 today essentially to address that topic in a depth that we haven't yet been able to do.
Yeah, I just asked that question just to be transparent with the public also, that we are going to talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
It's just not going to be today.
That's right.
And that, you know, the folks who brought in that public comment that particular one is going to be not today considered, but at another time when we discuss
Yeah.
yeah. And so that today's agenda is very focused on Article 7 and Article 8, and we'll have a more in-depth conversation later. Yeah.
Yes. I think we're also going to have a more in-depth conversation about the existence of the Board of Estimates. I'll come to that later in the agenda and discuss that. Let me share with you all Article 7. I put a lot of work into this. Ethan put a lot of work into this. It felt like I was like really exposing myself to share this document today because it's kind of raw work. It's raw work that like I can't wait to start working through it with Mr. Ben Guthorn. But we already started getting some comments from law.
Mr.
Jeff.
Chair, this is a totally mundane request, but Ethan, when you're doing this, can you hole punch these for us? Sure. Thank you. That way we can put them right in the binder and don't lose them between our offices and here. I appreciate it. Thank you.
So we all have these, we all have bound copies of the charter, and I'm going to just open mine and also have my Vic Turpola document next to me because there are inevitably going to be some points where it's worth turning to that for reference. So if I just kind of start from the top here, this Article 7, Executive Departments, begins with general provisions. Except as committed to the Board of Estimates, the executive power of the city is vested in the mayor, city administrator, the departments, commissions, and boards provided for in this article, and then it has this word special. It doesn't really mean anything. And the other officers, departments, commissions, and boards that may be created by law. And then there's another section to this on rulemaking authority that I just kept in here for reference by title only. I didn't copy all the other text. I don't think there's anything to change about saying like the executive powers of the city lie where they lie. But I did think that the word other made a lot more sense than the special. But in the second section on general provisions, powers and duties and contracts, there is I have got a drafted kind of reworking of this to say the powers and duties of all municipal officers, employees, boards, and commissions are those conferred by the executive power of the city, but may be superseded by ordinance. Jeff has already said maybe we want to workshop something different there, like as may and may be. What do you say? And may be prescribed by ordinance or something. Yeah. So again, working document. I haven't even incorporated that comment back in.
Are we doing questions during this, or are we waiting?
Sure, you do questions.
So what is the purpose of that edit? The one, section 2A.
I thought that the idea of like, and subject to the supervision of a superior municipal officer or agency, all this was sort of unnecessary and didn't, and took away clarity of intent. So the purpose of that rewrite is really just for clarity of intent.
So can we just strike and subject to the supervision of a superior municipal officer or agency and leave the rest?
I mean, even it seemed to me that consistent with the charter even seemed like it was redundant.
Well, I understand how that could be read as redundant,
Mhm.
but like I would say the self-referential nature of the governing constitution charter of the city can be important in context because there has to be a counterpoint to or otherwise by ordinance. I think it is not
Okay.
smart to rely on sort of anything being implicit. We want to be explicit with our statements.
I love it. Yeah, I yield to the professional advice.
Okay.
There is a section after that on bureaus and divisions that seems to make more sense than anything just to strike it.
Why?
Because an agency director can already, through their executive authority, establish the organization of their department into divisions and such.
So that's not entirely true because if we follow the rest of your revisions to Article 7, we're striking the entirety of every department and the meat of what they're able to do and their powers and duties. And so I do not believe that it is actually clear that the head of an agency would be empowered to dictate the organization of their department. I think, and I'll make my position more globally known necessarily about the edits to this article, is that I think the efforts to omit material that ought to be in code or regulation is appropriate. I think that this may go a bit further and have some collateral consequences of removing necessary power and authority for each individual department that they then get to go execute through code and through regulation. Simply not stating their authorities is not an option, in my opinion.
But I thought that the original intent was what Tervolo was talking about, not to, like, some of this can be in code, so let's put that in code, but like some of, like the agency head does this and the purpose of the agency does this, is I thought what we were talking about. Not that there would be blanket, everything gone, and we make up the agencies in code, but that the agencies are there. Actually, I mean, there's some that are missing, right? Like DHCD is not in here.
John?
No, I was just hearing what you said. I'm on the same train of thought.
My understanding comes from, or my approach here comes from the idea that the charter doesn't actually have to enumerate the existence of any agency at all.
No, of course it
Any
doesn't need to.
And then that doesn't, the utter absence of a department in the charter still would not inhibit the executive power of the city in the mayor
Agreed.
to be able to create it, or the city council by ordinance to create it, and to establish those powers, or by being silent on those specific powers, allow them to be exercised through executive action, executive exercising of the executive power of the city, that we do place trust in the mayor and the executive branch to make things work properly, right? And I think that by saying at the very minimum that these agencies, these departments exist, finance, law, public works, fire, that by simply acknowledging their existence, they have to exist, and the mayor is going to always reasonably direct their directors. You know, the director is not going to direct the health commissioner to run the fire department. They're not going to direct the director of the fire department to run the Department of Transportation.
I hear what you're saying. 2 points, working backwards. I think it's interesting to have that perspective and that level of trust for the executive in this context. And then to also simultaneously do away with that trust in terms of the establishment or lack thereof of the Board of Estimates or the budget process. I think it's an interesting line to toe. So I think that's worth conversation. Going back to the first part, for me, and my understanding of our delegation of power from the state, there, I would say, ought to be, for reasons of clarity, be a direct line from Article 2, where we're assigned our powers as the city from the state, to individual departments for exercise of those specific authorities. Correct, the mayor can independently and by themselves direct people who work for them to do all these different things. But there is purpose, I believe, in articulating some type of structure for the government and responsibilities of which department do what, especially essential functions. I think there's a lot of puffery in here and other sort of kind of superfluous material that need not be in the charter, but I just don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And that's my kind of biggest concern. And from a kind of functional, how do we interpret the code and the authority from the day that this amendment arguably is ratified by the voters during the general election in 2026, is that no longer can I point to, or can Michelle Toth or anybody in the law department point to a specific authority that says, yes, this department may promulgate regulations in this specific area because it's articulated either in the code or in the charter. And there's a lot of balancing between where that authority is articulated. And without a parallel bill that takes whatever authorities that we are removing from the charter, I shouldn't say removing, reassigning to the code is probably a better way to put it. Without a companion bill to do that, I worry about the gap in time and just more generally that we are going to be kneecapping departments in some interstitial period between when we're doing this charter work and when they are going to do their own work. Granted, that challenge may come from internally and not externally, but it's arguable.
Yeah, and I mean, I hear exactly. I get exactly where you're coming from. I don't know how much we gain by just cutting out this piece, but again, I think the clarity is important. Yeah, so I mean, just leave it, and we can go from there. I mean, I get the point.
let's heard. Thank you, Ben. I'll note, and you probably already looked at it, the attempt at a concept for a transition provision that anticipates that gap and, I think intends that there be a fire lit under the mayor and city council to get ordinance legislation passed in the 2 years after this becomes effective. Because what it says is that all the stuff that we would be taking out of the charter, it technically it's taken out of the charter as soon as it's ratified, but the effect of that removed text remains in effect until either the next general election, so a 2-year sunset, or if sooner, its purpose is spoken to in ordinance or regulation. I would love for there to be a companion bill for everything that we're doing here, but I want to get things done here and not have the ability to get things done here hinge on whether or not we can get 2 bills drafted for every one thing that we want to do.
But I think though that we talked about this before though, that I don't want instability if, we're passing this thing without having a companion ordinance. If we're going to move in this direction, we should give direction to the mayor's office now, or at least by next meeting, to say, we're really taking this seriously. We want to move what's in charter, some provisions of the charter, into ordinance, direct DLR to help us start writing it, and that the mayor's office, if they want to see any changes into what's here, to do that kind of now. I think that's
I'm happy to talk about that process further. I think it's like a kind of I would like to go through this document just to talk about what's in it, and then talk a little bit more about that timeline process. There's another one, Tyler. Seven. So in the course of trying to eliminate a bunch of repetitive stuff, there's repetitive stuff. I'll come back to Ben's point. There's repetitive stuff, then there's fluff stuff, and then there is actual substantive powers and duties. And if there is some level of power and duty that should be expressed in the charter that doesn't then stand in the way of us operating our government by ordinance, by regulation, by other means, in a flexible manner, a flexible and contemporary manner, and an adaptable manner. If there's a way, if there's a level of powers and duties that can be expressed that is not stepping over a line, then let that be, crafted to be added back in here. But there is so much that is simply repetitive or that goes way beyond expression of powers and duties. And so what I've done here is to try to identify and cull especially the repetitive stuff, and in most cases, the stuff that seems to go beyond powers and duties and delves into administrative or regulatory or legislative. So if I went over the mark, this is, like I said, I'm putting myself out here by sharing this document that I put a lot of time into. And I feel very exposed with this. I'm like getting, I'm not getting emotional, but I'm here for to hear everybody's response and to figure out how we do this. So moving on to the next thing, bureaus and divisions. Executive, I propose to strike this thing that I think is actually doesn't need to be there. Executive departments. So these next sections, 3 and 4, account for essentially the fact that, like, as you go through this article of the charter, you see agency is established. It has a director. The director's salary is accounted for in the ordinance of estimates. The director will have a deputy who steps in their absence. And it doesn't need to be said again and again and again in each department that these things exist. If we simply say what departments exist, that is 3, and then say each department, all departments shall have these same things, we can eliminate a whole bunch of repetitive stuff from the charter and make it much more streamlined in what it's actually presenting of substance. So instead, and in the process, as we think about how to say the least and actually hit our mark of intent, like, I'm sorry, it doesn't have page numbers. The second, yeah, second page, second page.
The back page of the article.
Second page.
Article 7, Section 2. I'm not certain that every single time we say there's a director and this is their like one qualification, that like that qualification is the right thing or is meaningful. And it's different with each director or each agency head. And it just seems to me to be adequate and appropriate, particularly given that there is a nomination and confirmation process, that we're in the position of affirming that we believe and trust in this person to be appointed to this position, that they're up to the job, that it makes just as much sense to simply state municipal officers shall have qualifications consistent with the powers and duties of the role. It's a simple catch-all. Appointment, the city administrator, the heads of all departments and bureaus, the members of all commissions and boards shall be appointed, must be confirmed, and shall serve pursuant to Article 4, Section 6. Again, this is adapted from what happened, is said over and over and over again,
Chair,
section after 6.
Under the appointment section, though, not all commissions and boards are appointed by the mayor and then approved by the council.
No,
But
most of them are.
Most of them are. You're
Yeah.
totally right. Most of them are, but
except as may be specified otherwise.
And like in the code.
There's gonna, so it's a,
like
that's a,
the
we don't even need examples. It's
OIG and also the
as
ARB.
we just can add in as needed. We can add in something, whether it's for all of this section 4 or whether it's in subsections within. We just say except as maybe otherwise specified, or some language to that effect.
So then, just quick question, if I may, then, because I know that, like, again, and I said this, I think, I'm not sure what meeting, but I said that, like, when it comes to anything in this part of the charter that is like the executive branch, that like we will obviously want to be very involved in any changes there.
Yep.
But that it is beneficial for somebody to be able to look at their city charter and say that, like, there is a Department of Public Works that is responsible for whatever, right? Like, where are you saying that we would take all of that out of here and you would put that in the code?
This is the whole conversation we just had.
No, I know, but like, why do you think that is? Why is it not appropriate charter material for some of those core city agencies to be here and to be laid out in that way? Because I know that in previous conversations we said that there were some that were laid out perfectly, and I thought the route that we were going would be to get rid of the areas where it went into too much detail and leaving it like, there is this department, this is the director's appointed by the mayor, staff, salary, and leave it at that. And that should be the case for every single one, and purpose, as opposed to now this new thing, which is getting rid of it all and just making this general comment about.
It's not a general comment.
Well, it is.
It's literally restating what exists in every single section of agency detail again and again and again. Ben?
Oh, I was just going to offer to MOGR that we did just go through that discussion. So I'm happy to talk to you after the fact so we don't take up more of the committee's
Yeah.
time.
Sorry, you
Fading
came in
fame.
right as we finished that
Oh.
whole conversation.
That doesn't stop me from asking the question.
And we're leaning in that direction is the point.
we're leaving.
What you're asking about.
Oh, good.
Yeah, that's why.
Okay.
Yeah. I've stripped things away for repetitiveness and for where it seems to go well beyond, but I've also stripped us down to where if we need to put something back in to say what an agency's purpose is, then we can easily add that back in without adding more. Like that, it makes as much sense to say, let's just start from scratch with these agencies to craft the right way of saying why this agency exists and have that be one thing added back in the process of eliminating the 7 things that don't need to be there. And so in almost every agency's case, it says that there is a director. It says that the director has qualifications. It says that there's an appointment process. It says that they will have a deputy step in their absence. It says that their salary is accounted for in the ordinance of estimates. It does not make sense that we should have to have 4 different subsections in each agency's section to say that same thing over and over and over again, on top of a 2-line clause that simply says this agency exists, when instead we can just have a list of the agencies exist and then have a list of those things that are common to every single agency. That is what sections 3 and 4 are. A list of the agencies that exist and a list of the things that are common to all of them.
Got it. And so what about housing? Because that's not on this list.
Housing does not exist in the charter. It
I know
exists
that.
only in the code.
So should it be a charter agency?
As far as I'm concerned, and as I've already stated here, none of these agencies has to exist in the charter. But it also says any other established by ordinance or executive authority.
Mm-hmm.
I get what both of you are saying. I think your point is that it doesn't have to be enumerated. I think your point is that since it already exists, why not enumerate it? Yeah, I get it.
My idea of the charter is like, what do we want to not see just be easily washed away? Should the vibe of this city change? It's the cleanest way to say it. You get somebody in here who says, I don't want a Department of Housing. It's easier to get rid of Department of Housing in the city code than it would be to get rid of the Department of Housing in the city charter. Like,
It's also not, but it's also not so easy that it's like actually a risk that it's just going to disappear.
if you got Tyler on your government affairs team and can get you the votes, you can make the Department of Housing disappear.
Let's go on. That's a sidebar conversation. If the mayor's office wanted to propose the topic of adding the housing department into the charter where it does not exist today, the mayor's office was and is free to propose that the housing department be added into the charter.
Right. Yeah.
Moving on.
Mr. Chair, but there's some that are just don't exist that we need to take out. Like,
Yes. Yeah, we'll get to it.
Okay.
Sections 5 through 8 are several things pertaining to the finance department. I'll touch on that in a second. I'll just skip ahead here. But I made notes about striking the existing sections 5 through 8. The city administrator is so different as they don't have a different separate article. They are in, sections 135 through 140 of this article. It made logical sense to me that the city administrator, being so completely different from a department that has specific charges for transportation, fire, whatever, that the city administrator should not be listed after almost all of them, but have it right up front. And so after enumerating the powers and duties of, or the executive power of the city and the agencies or departments that exist and basic composition of those agencies, let's go straight to the existence of the city administrator and what that role is.
So you put all of the departments under it.
No, it's just the city administrator is expressed separate from the departments. And this language is essentially the same as what exists already.
I'm just looking at the city administrator's part of it. It's pretty, there's a few pages here.
So.
Add all those back in, or are we?
So
putting
here,
this in
so
code?
5 on page 3 here, whatever it is, we don't have page numbers.
Read on this document?
Mhm.
Okay.
So section 5 there, city administrator establishment.
Yeah. That would be-
That is the same as
Right, section 135, got it.
section 135.
Yep.
Sorry, let me go here. Right? Section 6, I've just referenced 138. 138 is about the removal.
So all this other piece would be in code.
No, so 136. So 135 is city administrator establishment.
Yes.
That is important because the city administrator is not in the list of executive departments.
Right, right. Mhm.
And so then 136, city administrator appointment term, all this stuff is the same as what exists in what we say here in section 4, qualifications, appointment, deputies, salaries.
It's not the same.
Mayor shall appoint the city administrator without regard to political affiliation, subject to confirmation by the council pursuant to Article 4. That is commensurate.
It's the same.
That
Yep.
is the same. Qualifications. The city administrator must have, prior to appointment, at least 5 years of administrative experience that is sufficiently broad, responsible, and technical to function as the city administrator. This is what I mean when I say that's very specific, and I'm not sure that it exactly gets us what we want, and that it suffices to say municipal officers shall have qualifications consistent with the powers and duties of the role. So using.
So
a
this
catch-all-
part here would be taken out completely, not put in code at all, just something that we would
It's
know.
put right there. It's put right there in 4. The city administrator shall also be thoroughly familiar with modern accounting methods. All of this is further like giving detail to qualifications consistent with the powers
No,
and duties
okay,
of the
I
role.
get that. So what you're saying though.
If you want to
it's-
put something in code, we can.
Can, but what you're proposing is that this all makes sense because, like, to take out, because it is consistent with the powers and duties of the role.
Mhm.
That's okay.
Yeah.
What is
This,
stuff?
this part about 5 years experience, about familiarity with accounting. I mean, that's like a job description that you would post on
Right. It's the job
thing. It's
description.
not something that needs, I agree, it doesn't need to be in the charter. And then it is like a job description and qualifications. You don't usually put that in code either.
Right. And then to assure the selection of the most qualified individual available, the mayor may retain any recognized testing agency to evaluate and make recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, that's
concern-
hiring 101, right?
Right,
It doesn't need to be.
right.
I got you.
Right. But it also doesn't need to be in code because we don't usually put that kind of stuff in code.
Right.
Is your point?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Term,
Would that stay? Co-terminus with the mayor?
it's the same as any other term for any other municipal officer.
Mhm.
And term is spoken to in a different section of the charter. It's not spoken to in Article 7. I in fact had a
It's the
sec.
mayor's article.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right.
I actually had a thing in here speaking to term
Mhm.
and then made reference back to that and said,
Right.
this is already spoken to.
Okay.
It doesn't belong here.
Okay. I got it.
Okay. But city administrator, deputy city administrator. So this is derived from, I'm sorry, I thought that I had the right point of reference in here. I do have it later on in the document. I'm sorry. But 139 B
Would be a separate section. Would
two.
be s-
139B2 is 7.
Right. Got it. Yep.
139A is something that does not need to be expressed, that is common and exists, that a director or a head of an agency can have staff and direct their staff.
Right. Because you say
right?
it earlier anyway.
You don't need, yeah.
Got it.
And deputy city administrator, again, it's commonly stated here, deputies, except as by other process specified by ordinance, a department head or the chief administrative officer shall appoint a deputy who shall be the acting director whenever a vacancy shall occur at the head of the department or whenever the head shall be incapacitated or otherwise unavailable for duty, right?
And should the shall be a may? Because not all of these departments have a deputy director. Like BMZA doesn't have a deputy; they just have an executive director. And if you do that, then this will then require them to have a deputy, and that costs money.
Well, it says here,
says-
except by other process specified by ordinance, right?
And then it says a department head or the chief administrative officer shall appoint a deputy.
Okay.
Right.
Um,
And like BMZA, I think we're gonna have to put in code and we can say, because this says, except as other process specified by ordinance.
mhm.
You know, that's the
So,
key there. Okay.
and then 8, I said C 140. 140 is the powers and duties of the city administrator. I have not suggested that we alter that in any way.
No, just put it in under the same section. Got it. Okay.
Moving on, sections 9 through 18
So all this
are the finance department beyond the simple establishment of the department and it having a director and the director's salary being accounted for, right? I don't know. This was one where I just marked it as undetermined as something where I recognized exactly what Ben brought up before, that there is exceptional value in having important powers and duties enumerated in the charter, and that this is a section that needs work to cull through it, to go through it and to whittle it down or to be clear about what needs to be there. There's also some stuff in there, as I noted up above at the top of this page where I said 5 through 8 is finance. And I said strike 5 through 7 because they are accounted for in sections 3 and 4 here. And then strike 8 because it is duplicative of provisions in Article 6 where it talks about the budget process. If I go to it, I read it.
So
to you.
9:18, so.
So 9 here.
9.
Budget administration, 8, in accordance with the rules established by the Board of Estimates, the department shall prepare the preliminary budget. That's already said in the Board of Estimates article where it talks about the budget preparation process. It
But
doesn't need to be
I'm
said.
back at 9:18 right here, where it sounded like you said, we don't have a statement yet because we have to cull down all of the.
Yeah,
things
this
that are
needs work.
Federal, okay.
I just marked this as undetermined and I
Yep.
highlighted that word undetermined
Yeah.
because this needs work. This is something I have not had the depth of
Yep,
ability to go into.
right, because you have to list all of these things and maybe it's a list, but not a description, right?
It needs some craft work. 19 through 21, Board of Finance. I suggest we strike that. We had the letter from the director of finance explaining what it does, but when it comes down to it, it's essentially something that can function as a tool of internal mechanics of the department. It doesn't need to be. The director can call on whomever he feels necessary to give advice on how to invest in the city and the taxpayers' interest. And so I suggest that we strike the Board of Finance. Department of Law, I only suggest striking this first little section, the establishment of law, because again, that's done in section 3 here. Law is listed among the departments in section 3. Going on to the rest of the law department, some minor changes here. Retaining the city solicitor. It was good. I thought good advice that is common enough for for a city's law department and its city solicitor to be spoken to in the charter. The advice was essentially like, even if you don't want to include Public Works, Rec and Parks, DOT, all these other departments in your charter, it is common practice to have your law department in your charter. And since we refer to our section 4 here uses head as a generic term, the head of a department, where in practice and later on in code or just in practice, you can say, well, we all refer to the head of the fire department as the chief. We all refer to the head of such and such department as the whatever we call them. But head is used here in 4 as a generic kind of catch-all. But because we do refer to the city solicitor as the city solicitor again and again and again, I just retained this statement: the city solicitor shall supervise and direct the department. The qualifications for this one I thought were unique, in that there is something different about practicing law in Maryland than practicing law in another state, and that we absolutely, unequivocally want somebody who is barred in the state of Maryland. And so that was a very minimal but basic qualification that seemed worth expressing. Retain the next section. Ethan, the additional assistance section here, we made some minor revision to that.
I think we discussed minor revisions, but I don't know that they actually we actually went ahead with implementing them. We had talked
this
with
was
Jeff about
25 had this provision about a deputy and other staff, which again is spoken to in 4, so it doesn't need to be copied here. And then the additional assistance is kept here.
It's kept where?
So
yeah, with
25B is what I say should be 25. 25A is addressed in section 4.
Just a quick question. 25B, would you feel like why is that one necessary, that you're going off the premises that a director can kind of?
25B is a unique situation where these purposes in connection with the examination of titles on behalf of the city or the representation of a city agency, the city solicitor may employ out of the funds appropriated by the ordinance of estimates to the department for general expenses or out of the proceeds of loans. Or what this is doing is making an exception to the professional services standard, that procurement of professional services in general by any other agency has to go through the Board of Estimates. But there is something so utterly routine about examination of titles on behalf of the city or representation of a city agency by outside counsel that is different, that this carves out an exception for those things.
Just to play devil's advocate here, I think any department could articulate any number of professional services that they have to go through the BOE for as routine practice in their particular department or agency. I don't necessarily think that the examination of title is any different from retaining somebody to do surveys for DGS or DOT or anything else to that effect. I think it seems like a unique carve out. And if we want to continue that, that's within the purview, obviously, of the council, but it's not all that special.
Noted.
Yeah.
It is the only exception to the professional services standard that is
Making
laid
it
out.
more interesting.
Yeah. So, look,
But I think it makes sense though
No.
to have them have a purview.
Yeah.
To be able to seek representation for very specific things in a quick manner, rather than having to go through the Board of Estimates.
That's procurement policy. Why is that in the charter?
Yeah.
They have the authority to seek outside counsel. Why do you need to specifically articulate that they have the authority to procure outside services for the review of real property title?
if we are indeed making dramatic changes to procurement so that it doesn't have, so it's not prescribed in the charter, and we're deferring procurement standards, practice, policy to ordinance or regulation, then it is that would be a more appropriate and equally ample opportunity for us to enumerate any exceptions.
Yeah.
And it's within the authority of the purchasing agent or the city administrator in policy through the administrative manual to say, much as it used to be through EAs, I forget the first letter, executive expenditures, or I don't know. But to say that certain professional services, and there's a whole list for the law department, need not go through certain, procurement procedures up to and through a certain dollar level. But again, it doesn't need to be here.
Yeah. And I think that's one that, again, like that's Article 7. That's one that like I would want us to be able to take back as we
Take it back.
look at, and then
Take it back.
can come back and
We're
talk
giving
about it.
we're giving an initial read through here. Can't take something back that you haven't got in the first place. I'm giving it to you at the same time as I'm giving it to everybody else, the work that I've done here so far. Lawsuits and appeals. This is retained as it is, except for that we no longer call it the Court of Appeals. It's called the Supreme Court of Maryland. And we note that there is a reference to another subsection or another section in here, and that will need to be renumbered. I've written here Department of Public Works strike. Okay, we can just say Department of Public Works undetermined. Let's do that to try to smooth that discussion over up front here. But again, every one of these agencies has more in it than needs to be there. I would refer folks, though, for I think good constructive comment to the Tervola document, and let's just, for this one instance, I'll pull it up and see what it actually says and read it. These charter provisions contain non-essential charter information and ideally would be revised. The provisions in section 41 are legislative in nature and should be deleted. So, work to be done on that. Sections 43 through 46 literally do not exist. They were repealed in 2008. They're noted here just for continuity for us going through this number by number. 47 through 49, fire department. These are the things pertaining to the fire department that are accounted for in sections 3 and 4 here. Section 50 is about the creation and composition of the Board of Fire Commissioners.
And this is an interesting one. Like some of these agencies that have these boards that are technically over the agency, but there's an agency head. Like that's the same thing for the Department of Planning.
Yeah.
Planning Commission is over the agency, but there's a director of plan. Like, I'm not even sure. I think this is a conversation for Chief Wallace, but like, do we even still need a board of fire commissioners?
My first question would be, what do the fire officers think about that? Go ask the union. That's my honest answer. But so this is kept and the redundant language is noted to be struck. 51 is about what the Board of Commissioners, the Fire Commissioners Board does. It's brief and maybe it needs some revision, but it's so incredibly brief and very limited in what they actually do. I haven't talked. No, I did talk about the next thing with the union, but I had a question about the 50. Sorry, this note in here. I don't remember exactly what this note intended. 52 is this really long thing about retirement of employees. And I'm not sure if it's an active
So that's a question.
standard. Yeah, that's a question. I don't remember why I said labor commissioner, law department. I don't know. I have to reread this. This one was a weird thing that needs some attention.
It's about the retirement.
53, fire department arbitration. I want to be real clear because it is unique that the fire department has a given right to binding arbitration. And that right to binding arbitration is established in Article 2. What this section does,
Councilmember, can you please use the microphone?
what this section does is lay out a purely administrative process for how to initiate an arbitration session, basically. What to do when you believe that it's time for arbitration. Who needs to communicate what to whom and by what means. That is purely administrative and does not belong here in the charter.
And the right to binding arbitration is in Article 2, which we can't touch anyway because only the General Assembly
Right.
can touch
The
it.
only thing here that I'm talking about touching that pertains to arbitration is one section that's purely administrative in its nature.
And where would this go? Would it just
We'd
be a
have to rewrite it in
regulation?
charter,
Or
in
it would be
code.
code?
We'd have
Okay,
to
this would
rewrite
be
it in code, I
Okay.
would think.
Well, that's a good question. Is there one, like, when we look at all the arbitration and I haven't looked into this, but Tyler had a question about, do we put all the arbitration into one place as opposed to throughout?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
When the local control board was meeting to discuss the transfer of the police department from the state to the city, this was a topic and something pushed by the police department that they wanted an equivalent provision in the charter. It did not happen, obviously, but the language with respect to their own retirement and arbitration was put into the code. So if you go to what's
We
now-
passed that legislation.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So
So we already have a model, is what you're saying, of putting this in the code.
yes, and there is already an article that speaks to the fire department as well, where it could be placed.
Okay. Thank you.
I've omitted something by accident here. I meant to have a note in this document here about the next sections, 54. So 53 is the fire department arbitration thing. 54 is the beginning of the health department. That's 54 through 56. I haven't considered the extent of calling this. Didn't look at it that closely, partly because my initial thoughts are always with certain things, man, don't touch that. Somebody's gonna be real upset if you touch that. But But there's not a whole lot here that isn't,
I have
the
a,
powers and duties. I think it's a good example. There's some powers and duties here. We probably want powers and duties to exist there for the health department.
yeah,
It's one that's, exceptionally brief as an agency is touched on here. But like 54 doesn't need to exist. We
Right.
have a head of department spoken for in 4, qualifications, appointment, term already spoken to, salary already spoken to, staff already spoken to. So we probably end up not needing 54 or 55, but still want 56.
yeah.
Mr.
Chair, I had a question. This is a little bit irrelevant, but is in here. The difference between a commissioner and a director, right? So in the health department, we have a commissioner of health, but we have a director of public works.
The reason now that you bring that up, the reason I kind of got sidelined in trying to look at this is because I wanted to actually double check. I'm pretty sure the state says that there's a health commissioner. I forget where that is.
So the city health department
Mhm.
is older than the statewide
Mhm.
health system.
Mhm.
So because it predated,
Mhm.
it was maintained as
Mhm.
existing. The
Mhm.
health commissioner for the city of Baltimore, I believe, is the only individual that holds both a simultaneous state role as being the head of the respective jurisdiction and also of the city for the health department.
Okay.
So the reason why it's commissioner, I can't tell you. There is no functional difference, but it is just a name title.
Yeah. So
Is that something we care about? I mean,
I don't. It's not. It's
like
not something that I
this
care about.
right now.
It's just if we call them the commissioner, we call them the commissioner. But since section 4 here just speaks generically to the idea of there being a head to each department, it does suffice.
Well, then in DHCD, which is not in the charter, but the head is a commissioner, and I think that came from the HABC combination days,
Probably.
is what
Yeah.
I think.
So just if we need to, if we feel like it's important, but
It's not, I was just curious.
yeah, I don't know. So 54 through 56 is the health department. We probably, again, want powers and duties. 57, yeah, for sure. 57 and 58 are an obsolete Department of Social Services. So that would just be deleted. 59,
Although, oh, wait, one second. I think that, so there is a Department of Social Services, but it is given to us by the state.
it's a state department. There is no city.
I agree
Department
with
of
that. I
Social
just don't
Services.
know, so it's fine.
The Department of Social Services that this charter talks about
It doesn't
does not
exist.
exist.
Right. We do have a Department of Social Services, but it is because it is a branch
Similarly,
of
the very
state.
next section, 59,
Well, the commission is actually this will be a conversation because we did have that outreach from the state. We are in the process of restanding up the social service commission. So we would need to talk to the state if we're going to make any changes there because we were notified by them that we needed to get that commission back up and running. So we need to hold on that one.
okay, let us know.
Okay.
There is no Department of Education. That is the next sections, 59 through 64. This is not the school board. This is an antiquated, obsolete thing.
When Baltimore City lost our control of the school board in 97, we agreed that this would not exist, that it would be a function of the state. And we've been, slowly getting it back. We were able to then, at the time, we couldn't even put our own members on the board. And so now we got a little bit of change where we're doing 2 electeds, the city,
Which you note,
Yeah.
it doesn't exist here.
It's not in there.
This is obsolete.
and also that the mayor doesn't appoint the CEO of the city schools.
This is an obsolete past iteration.
Yeah, so this is,
will be deleted.
this has to be
Yes.
deleted if we're gonna keep, I mean, if one day we decide that we want local control of the school system, which might happen, we then have to figure that out. But right now, we're not doing that.
Yeah, at which point it would likely suffice for us to put it into the code. If
Well, we would
needed
have, that's right, that's
Right.
right. Right.
to. So that gets us up through section 64. 60, sorry, I omitted a few things. I thought I had notes about these things in here. 65 through 69. Sorry, 65 through 68. 67, sorry. 65 through 67 are Rec and Parks, the department. 68 and 69 are the creation of a board that is obsolete. The board has not existed for,
The board does exist.
who are the members?
The Rec and Parks Board does exist.
Did we, I don't remember us appointing any or approving anybody from the
There-
Board of Public Works last term.
They're not.
So for the history of the city, the majority of all of these departments at some point had different boards or commissions that governed them because of political patronage. So ultimately, the existence of the board that may or may not do anything and probably exists today for community input reasons, and at that time existed for the being able to put a political thumb on a department from many different angles, like that's why these exist. Whether or not they need to continue is a different statement.
I mean, like, I think that, like, as we've been doing the boards and commissions work, and I know we had this conversation last term, right? We were talking about, like, there are several defunct boards and commissions in the charter, in the code that just need to go.
Yeah.
And to the point that you raised earlier, there's nothing stopping any director or city administrator from
Bringing together,
bringing
an
together a group of
advisory
people
group.
so I think this could be fine.
So that's 68, 69. 70 through 80 are the planning department. I'm just going to read this section here from Vic Tervala, his notes. The first half of these provisions concerning establishing the planning commission and department. Section 72 is too detailed for a charter, although generally providing for the departmental duties is unobjectionable. Section 74 through 78 deal with the master plan and subdivision matters, which generally are subjects which require the expertise of professional planners. As such, these sections are legislative or regulatory in nature. Section 79 is superfluous. Section 80, dealing with penalties, is an ordinance masquerading as a charter provision. It needs deletion. So there's kind of a lot more in this comment than there is in most of the other comments on sections here. It's my intent to try to work with the Planning Commission chair and others to gain rounded perspective on these provisions to be able to take a next step to say, what do we think about doing X, Y, and Z with this?
And the director of planning.
Yeah. This document has all those provisions of the planning department, and I copied it in there for my own like working purposes, just
So,
for ease of review.
Mr. Chair, I was wondering about the commission, the planning commission itself. This does fold into the capital budget conversation we're going to have later.
Mhm.
But is the commission, when we go before the commission on our zoning bills or whatever it is, it's simply advisory, right?
They are a recommending body.
Correct. Why do we need it?
So in the same reasons that departments offer their reports as subject matter experts is the same reason why the planning commission reviews it. It's really the planning staff that you're getting the recommendation from, and they're more likely than not following that.
Sometimes they follow it.
There is state law that speaks to overall planning requirements. It's likely important to look at with respect to the planning commission in terms of any of the things that they currently do. But I hear your point.
Planning commissions are universal, and in my experience, tend to bring a level of expertise to the field of planning, which is, I think, is utterly essential to city building, city maintenance, city growth.
But do they typically oversee the department that they advise? Like, is that something that we see across the country? Like, I think this is
It is
different
actually,
in that.
we are downgraded from the level of what other places actually do. It used to be and has been is common in many places that the planning commission is solely responsible for appointing their director and oversight of the department, that the executive of the city has no power in that. This is a Schmoke era kind of downgrade from that level of independence that says what it says in terms of they oversee the department, and in terms of electing or selecting a director, that they advise the mayor. And there's this whole thing about that. It is very, very common for there to be a hard separation of planning departments and their oversight by a planning commission separate from the rest of the executive department.
I didn't want to take you out of a job, but I was just.
BMZA.
Same planner.
There are some other notes from Vic Tervola about that that I think are worth referencing to figure out what changes, if any, need to happen here. There are also things, I have had numerous discussions with law department staff, with the CAO, with others in the executive branch about the fact that Baltimore's BMZA preceded the state's zoning article. And so we are separated from what at the state level, we are separated from what governs zoning everywhere else in the state. There are provisions in the charter that are duplicative of what exists in the state law, and there is, I think, reasonable discussion to be had about whether we should continue to have a BMZA the way that we do, or whether we could move or should move to a model that's more like what other jurisdictions in the state do. But changes would have to be made at both the charter and the state code level. And I've spent some time prior to this work here looking at, and again, discussing with the law department, with Hillary Ruley, in particular, what would happen if we change certain things in the charter that without things changing at the state level. Like, would there be like an interim period of chaos? I don't know. I just make a note here in this document to see the Tervola considerations and consider potential changes that I had with the CAO, and deletion of changes that are redundant of state law. So I just notes for myself here. It's a working document again. Legislative reference. We have more discussion to have. We have more discussion pending about that. Civil Service Commission. This is another, there's a lot. It is enough in a charter to declare that city employment will be governed by a merit system. How the merit system operates should be a matter of regulation or legislation. Instead, sections 97, 99, 100, 101, 2, 3, and 4 contain impermissible charter material. So need to look at that and see if that's the right thing to do, is to cut things that shouldn't be here.
And Mr. Chair, now are we talking about all of these things being like 2026 stuff, or we're just talking through this document in general, right?
I think it's perfectly reasonable to think that this is something we could do.
But it also depends on, our earlier conversation around, can we actually have a companion ordinance? If we're going to take some of this out, I feel pretty strongly we need to have a companion ordinance. Otherwise, there's going to be some instability in terms of like, what's our plan? Why are we doing this? And, you know, we want to be able to have some transparency.
I want to be clear, and I think it's careful. It's important that we be careful about exactly what we say. I don't think that there is going to be instability. I think there's a potential for perception of instability. There isn't actual instability if agencies just continue operating the way that they are already operating. There is no reason to believe that by the ratification of a charter amendment to remove a bunch of stuff that is governing now that need not be in the charter in order to govern, that agencies will just overnight, or that the mayor will overnight decide that everything works completely differently. I just don't think there's any reason, and I don't like the idea of saying there's going to be instability.
Well, I think that
Perception of potential for instability is certainly something that we can address, acknowledge, and mitigate.
I think when we get to the Board of Estimates discussion, that's, I think, where
whole different thing.
that's going to be a challenge. So we might as well be consistent.
Then, Jermaine.
True, but even then, I understand like there's a perception versus what actually will happen. But I think when you legislate, you don't legislate from best case scenario. You know, I mean, just my thought. Like,
Well, that's why I think
But-
we need to have a companion code. Like if we're going to take out, if we're going to truncate
have something
the
up, but-
language of the Department of Finance in here, but we need to put it in code, we might as well put it in code while we're
While we're
looking
doing
at
that.
two pieces
I
of
agree with
legislation, the resolution to put on the charter.
This
and
is like
the-
this is 10,000 foot
Yeah.
view. I want to
Okay.
I want to get through this document.
All right.
It's 5:30.
I understand that, but I agree with that perception.
Did you have something, Ben, that was pressing? No.
If we get to discuss the global, let's say, cadence of introduction
Yeah.
today
Okay, we'll talk about it.
and the feasibility.
Okay. Ethics. This is another. This is this ethics section is totally bizarre in that it's the only thing in this charter that outright says, oh, and by the way, what we say here in the charter doesn't matter at all. It says in section 111, the mayor and city council by ordinance may modify, amend, alter, clarify, or implement any or all of the provisions of sections 105 through 111 of this article. Yeah, which we have done. If you read this, this is not really how things work. So it's arguably just not governing already. We have an article in the code on ethics that is more detailed than this and redundant generally of this. So I don't have too much trepidation about this not needing to be here. 112 through 113, for some reason, the title.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Development,
Chair, just
yeah.
to clarify, for
Yeah.
the ethics, are we treating it like another agency where we'll have, you know, it's going to be under the executive?
My point is that it's different from all of those others.
That's
in
what I'm
that
saying.
that what exists here in the code already is not the governing
Of course.
element.
Right.
And so
Are we
It-
taking it out?
it could
Are we
just- it could
moving
just be repealed.
under like OIG, which is where it is now. It's not in there now as the charter, but it's there in terms of like where the thing sits.
it's we would duplicate anything essentially that exists now. I assume.
So what you're saying is we do not need Board of Ethics in the charter.
We don't need the Board of
Okay,
Ethics. in this
that's
charter.
all I was
That's right,
clarifying. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, and one more point on that, that state ethics law already requires all local jurisdictions to have I think it says an appropriate entity, and then to have an ordinance, ethics ordinances governing conflicts of interest. Exactly. So I think very little of it actually needs to be in the charter.
Sections 112 through 113 were repealed in 2000, but for some reason the title Development Commission, which doesn't exist, were left in there. Is that editorial, Ben?
All titles of all sections aren't technically law.
Okay. So they don't exist. 114 through 116, again, for the sake of consideration here, I've written strike, but let's just say I wrote undecided, okay? Compensation Commission for elected officials. This is section 117 through 125. We need to retain the content of this, but it raises the question of, does this belong in Article 7? Is this an executive department? I'm not sure. It's a thing that exercises a form of executive power, as that is discussed. I don't know. I don't think it's hurting anything for it to be here in Article 7. I think for me, the consideration would be if there were any other things that we wanted to put into a section that is not the mayor, is not the city council, is not the executive departments. If we were making a move here to create some section for those outlier kind of things, like the Inspector General's office, it has its own article right now, but it could be just as well one of a number of things that sit outside of the legislative branch and the executive branch. And so if we were going to do that, perhaps it would make sense to put the Compensation Commission for elected officials in that article. 26 through 29, they don't exist. 130 through 134 is the general services article. Look, I didn't even write strike. I didn't even write undecided, undetermined there. General services is 130 through 134. Again, this is, same process here. Eliminate the repetitive stuff, eliminate the extra stuff. Let's leave ourselves with the essential, like, powers and duties that we feel are essential, indispensable to express. City administrator, I've already gone over that. This talks about how those sections are moved to earlier in the charter. And then 141 through 147, I dare not touch. So
All of the agencies should be there.
So that, look, this,
Now that we see you,
yeah.
it becomes a task only you can accomplish, which is simplifying a document. It's okay.
Put your right on.
Just want to congratulate you on making
Thank you.
simplifying a document so complicated.
Yeah, look, I've handed something over to you. It's work product. I think it's important, there is work happening in between these hearings to try to advance the things that we've talked about, and to try to come to these meetings with something constructive to be able to review. Councilman Bullock.
No, Mr. Chair, I just want to thank you for the diligence and the work you put in. We could tell that you've spent some long nights with some of this. So again, it was much appreciated.
Thank you. While we're in the mode, I'm sorry. Let's just talk about Article 8 for just a minute. All right, Article 8.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry, from a
Yeah.
process perspective,
Yeah.
since this is the first time that we're reviewing
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
are we gonna have space to be able to come back and say, we would prefer to do it this way instead of that way, or
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
do you want to do that?
We're not gonna, I think we're limited in our capacity about what we're gonna be able to get drafted. We have to have a conversation about that. And then I don't want us to bother getting things drafted that are not reflective of what I think we can reasonably determine is something we can agree on as an approach forward,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I don't want to waste anybody's time with that. That's why I'm not, go draft this. This is what I'm introducing. This is why this committee exists, so that we can determine as a collective what we think is reasonably agreeable, not just to us and our colleagues on the 4th and 5th floor, but to our partners on the 2nd floor.
So we'll, if we wanted to sort of comment on, now that we've gone through it and we want
Yeah.
to think about it and digest everything, send
Yeah.
something to you
Yeah.
ahead of time saying, hey, I'd
send
like
it
to
me and
discuss this,
Ethan.
that,
We'll
the other.
compile thoughts.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you. Mhm.
I'll also go back and I'll continue to flesh this out. Article 8. Franchises.
Oh, yeah.
This article is relevant to the discussions that we've had so far because it's where minor privilege lies. I'm going to read you what Tervala says about Article 8. This article has roots in the Charter of 1898, and you can all tell from the way that it's written very differently from the rest of the charter, and has not been the subject of much, if any, revision over the years. Other than certain overarching statements about when franchises and minor privileges need to be granted, the material in this article is largely dispensable in a charter. If sections 2 and 3 are to be retained, they need revision for purposes of clarity and succinctness and to be culled of extraneous administrative detail. Section 4, street railways, is obsolete. Section 6, trackless trolleys, is unnecessary. I think that means Section 5, actually. That's a typo. Section 5 is trackless trolleys. Section 6, advertising, need not be in the charter. And I don't know that we do this anymore, whatever it says. Section 7, reservation of rights, is superfluous. Section 9, minor privileges, can be removed as it contains legislative material. So this working document that I've shared with you all is essentially sections 1, 2, and 3 with a couple of minor changes noted in 1, and then noting the deletion of 4 through 7 and 9, and a minor change to 8. All in accordance with what is recommended here and what I think can be reasonably discerned.
Does this even have to be in the charter?
I'm not sure. I don't know about franchise authority. Franchise authority is a specific and unique kind of power.
Right.
It's one that we entered into a franchise with BGE before we were ever before we were ever authorized by the state to enter into franchise agreements.
Yeah.
And that franchise had in it no terminus. It's unending.
Yeah.
And it still exists today and is still a point of contention between the city and BGE in how we coexist and operate. It is important, I think, to talk about how to exercise the power to grant people authority to do things with our public property.
Uh-huh.
And it is important that we express that they have things like ending dates. I would not presume to remove the franchises article entirely from the charter. And I don't know, it's to me an esoteric field of practice enough that I can't necessarily read into it on my own and make a whole lot out of it. So
Jeff, do you all have?
And very generally, I would just say, I mean, franchise is not really a mystical or a magical word. It's really just a contract or an agreement to use, our public land, basically, or, streets or thoroughfares. So, I mean, there's certainly, I think, some case law and state law that impacts some of this that we'd have to make sure to flesh out. But yeah, I don't think we should be mystified by this article.
But if we're going to keep it, we want to simplify it.
Yeah, and I think you can do that.
But I mean, it sounds like if it is that There could be some general things, like you could take out all this very specific trolleys, whatever. Take out minor privilege, because that's what we wanted to talk about anyway.
Yeah.
right?
Other than certain overarching statements about when franchises and minor privileges need to be granted, the material in this article is largely dispensable in a charter. Yeah, if sections 2 and 3 are to be retained, they need revision for purposes of clarity and succinctness and need to be culled of extraneous administrative detail. Culled is a good word.
Yeah, and it might also be, important to point out that there are clearly those types of agreements that you would want to, go through an ordinance, go through council, and there are those other types of agreements to do something with rights of way, such as minor privileges, that you could just give to an administrative, agency. So I think that the importance of making those distinctions is still probably worth preserving and talking about, because they're both kinds of grants of rights to city, property or rights of way. But yeah, so I think it's important just to think about like you still want a skeletal structure of some kind in the charter talking about that.
Ben?
I would say also that this article is effectively a stop on the executive's capacity to fully give away public goods.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to view it from the perspective of the citizens of this city have a right and a public interest in the things under the streets and the wires and the poles and all this other sort of stuff. So from that end, there, in addition to just kind of the functional, what do you have to do to put a sign out over the sidewalk? There is that other element as well.
Yeah. The sign out over the sidewalk is the minor privilege stuff that we want to say. There's a difference between the kind of franchise that BGE has and the kind of franchise that MDOT/MTA has in order for the light rail to exist on our streets or for the metro to exist under our earth, because both are franchise agreements that we have with them. There's a very big difference between that and putting a sandwich board sign on the sidewalk or having a sign for your business sticking out over top of the sidewalk. Making a distinction about what a minor privilege is and being able to push off its administration elsewhere is important. But that hasn't been updated in recent years. The only thing that has been updated in recent years is what Ben pointed to, is the use of this article as a stop on the executive power to sell off the city's rights. And that stop was put in here just 6 years ago, with the exception of the city's sewer and water supply systems. Those and underground conduit system for cables. That stuff was all added in there in very recent history to say that we can never sell off our assets, right? I mean, am I right about that? Yeah. So rewriting here needs to happen. But that one, it's not so complicated an article. It's a lot out of me. Blanchard, how you doing?
Where am I? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, colleagues. As much as I appreciate the desire for simplicity and smoothness and sleekness, and I really do. I do think that at some point in the next couple meetings, we have some actually really, really substantive things to be tackling. And I just want to hope we ensure that we have time to tackle maybe the more substantive matters of the that are under consideration as well.
Yeah.
So
You're thinking about the budget stuff?
Yeah, the budget stuff, the funds, the procurement. I mean, really everything on the first place. There's a lot of big stuff to be making sure we're going through. I think this is I really appreciate this.
Yes,
Yeah.
so these proposal here, budget BOE mayor, budget BOE mayor, budget BOE mayor. That proposal, I already have a working draft, just like what we've gone through here today. So my plan is to share that in short order as well. In fact,
Awesome.
when I started working through this, I had one document that was, here is how I think a newly proposed budget article could look like, and had a separate document that is, once you take all of this budget stuff out of the Board of Estimates article and take out the procurement stuff from the Board of Estimates article and take out the 5 other sections in the Board of Estimates article that are superfluous, this is the 2 pages of Board of Estimates article that remain. So I had those 2 documents and I put them together. And then I had a separate document for the mayor.
Okay.
That I intend to incorporate in with that. And you actually have the mayor one.
Awesome. I do think it would be good if we could have the meeting more focused on those before. I think it would be helpful before we go into the public hearings to have kind of that preliminary conversation.
Yeah.
I'll just say that I think it would be very based if we amended Article 8, Section 5 to require the city to operate trackless trolleys. So just
you know
a consideration.
Based. Councilman Bullock, you got any thoughts you want to share with us?
Nothing additional. I just appreciate the robust conversation, the back and forth, and the reality that we don't always have the answers right now. But again, doing more digging. So good stuff.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Ramos?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for getting us started on this discussion by synthesizing some of this. So I really appreciate it. I think that's important for us to have something to feedback on.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that. I was just wondering about, I was just talking with Tylor. It sounds like they already have an ordinance for procurement already
Yeah, charter.
and a charter amendment that.
And an ordinance?
Yeah. So I wonder if we can just get, if we agree on it, because I would ask him to send it to us, if they're amenable to getting started so that at least we can go through almost a process with that as we're doing this to see, how it works. And then we can also say, like, the Charter Commission's doing its work, this is something that's already done, and we go through the process. You all did the work.
He's like,
Well, they shared a concept of a.
Well, I'm resending the charter amendment again.
The
I thought
charter
we sent
amendment.
it to y'all.
Yeah. I think we had some brief discussion about it. That
We had agreement to take it all out of the charter. We definitely
well,
had agreement
that's not
there.
and that's not what was in the several years old charter amendment that Tyler was talking about.
Okay,
It instead of taking it out entirely,
We leave
It-
in certain things.
it was leaving something in and specifically saying that that procurement practices would be determined by a resolution of the Board of Estimates.
Oh, yeah, no, we're taking that out.
And so it was just easier. It left us more flexibility if we just took it all out. And so that's what's in the thing that addresses these.
Oh, well, no, it says that the rules and regs pertaining to procurement shall be promulgated by essentially procurement, and that the Board of Estimates should review and approve the rules and regulations. But it didn't say anything about a Board of Estimates.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Jermaine, you got any thoughts, man?
No, well, no, it's just I appreciate the work that was put in beforehand. It kind of made it go a little smoother
Good, thanks.
and kind of feel like we're making progress. So
Thank you. Guthorn, what do you want to say?
May I ask for greater specificity?
No. Yeah, ask away.
To Councilmember Blanchard's point, there is I know you hear me say this or hear it in email, whether or not it's in my voice, capacity to do certain things, but not everything. I think specifically for Article 7, it is too important to rush. And I think that understanding how certain powers and duties in other sections that are not the kind of pro forma, there's a director, they have a salary, they get staff, et cetera, how that flows through both the code and then also just into general operations and regulations is going to be important. With respect to getting things to the 2026 ballot, I believe, Aaron, this date may be off the top of your head rather than mine, but the requirement to have it to the State Board of Elections certified, reviewed by the City Law Department is, I want to say early August, which requires us.
The date that I've been giving my advice is that whatever work this committee is doing, that is done by this committee by May 1st. Because after May 1st, we wind up in budget season for what everybody's bandwidth is going to take. And from there, there's not time to do what needs to get done to get it to the Attorney General's office.
Wait, what date did you say?
We want to get
May
we want to
1.
get our committee work done. That is, have bills introduced and voted on by this committee out to the full council by May 1st. That's what you're talking about, Aaron?
No, third reader.
Third reader
Passed by May
1st. Okay. Okay.
So with that said, working backwards from that date,
Yep.
it's a certain discrete number of meetings between now and then.
Yep.
And I need direction as to what is the priority of the committee so DLR can make efforts to execute on behalf of the committee.
Yep.
I imagine you'll want to have a draft here of whatever it is that's being proposed.
Mhm.
So to that end, pick 3 or whatever the reasonable number is. I understand in, the committee's estimation, certain things are simple in terms of
Mhm.
drafting per se,
Mhm.
but in terms of kind of the back end review to see how that kind of ticks on other parts of the code or
Mhm.
or regulations, that is also quite time consuming. Which, speaking of touch for the law department in that instance, rather DLR isn't going to speak to how it impacts from a legal perspective, but
Mhm.
we will tell you there are all these other references
Mhm.
and we need to understand the impact. So, yes, that's my takeaway of pick your favorites.
Sure.
And
Chanel.
I agree. A lot of what Ben said is what I was going to say, which is like, I think at the last meeting I kind of asked for like a list of like what is actually like on the table. And I think
got that.
right, yeah, I think that that's what this is. But some of the stuff in your document isn't on this table.
That's because, as I said at the outset of this hearing today,
Mhm.
every time we have gone through and discussed these topics,
Mhm.
we have touched on the one that's in the middle of the second page, overly prescriptive provision.
Yeah.
And the place where a lot of that exists
Mhm.
is in Article 7.
Okay.
And we hadn't been able to have any constructive conversation beyond the concept of overly prescriptive provisions as a thing that exists in the charter.
Yeah.
And so I've put together this Article 7 thing to talk about what that actually, like the breadth of that
Yeah.
to some degree. Because when you look at this sort of guiding document that we have for that, it's mostly in Article 7.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like as I've been like reading through and I've kind of gone back and watched pretty much all of the committee meetings we've had so far. It's like, I guess, do you all make the decision around like, do you just take the 26 ballot to kind of clean up the charter and then revisit some of the more politically sensitive items in 28. Because like I think we, to Ben's point, we do get to a place of like, again, wanting to actually have like a narrow
The
list.
cleanup is the more extensive drafting work.
Oh,
The things that I think we're thinking about putting in this budget BOE mayoral thing are actually much more straightforward to compile and to compose. And I will have my like working draft of that for everybody here in very short order. I've shared it with Ben, shared it with Jeff. And so we'll be able to talk about this to Councilman Blanchard's point. I think that's where these big substantive things are. And then back to this point I made at the beginning of like, the more I think about what we're doing here, the more I ask like, are we really talking about putting up 2, 3, or 4 different things, or like the subject of like the content of 2, 3, 4 things into one charter amendment? I mean, when I think about the budget BOE mayor thing, it would be just as easy, I think, caveat Ben, I think, to include in that the biennial audits thing for the comptroller's office, getting the biennial audits. Again, our conversation about biennial audits was there were several minor changes to the biennial audits commission and their work that the comptroller wanted done. But we said, well, why would we change this if we could just delete it and put it in code later, make it easier to make such future amendments much more easily?
So
As a repeal, that could be included in.
Jeff and Aaron may be able to speak to this more specifically. I know that there has been greater scrutiny, and I believe there's actually legislation in Annapolis this year that is speaking to, at least from the voter initiative side, of requiring a specific degree of clarity and plain language and other things to that effect in the written word and how things are presented to individual voters. So to the end of combining certain material because it is related, there is, I argue, a good there's a good argument to be made that certain things be split apart for their ability to be discreetly understood by individuals, especially when we're talking about such great systemic change in how certain things are run in this city.
Sure. On the other side is we could rewrite a whole charter and put a whole new charter that repeals the existing charter and replaces it wholesale.
I'm happy to do that in 4 to 6 years with you.
I'm just
Working
saying-
now
I'm
every
just-
day
I'm just
to
saying
do
that a whole replacement of a charter would be all inclusive of all kinds of unrelated
Right,
things.
but the public discussion that goes around, if you're presenting this idea that this commission or whatever body is getting together to revise the entirety of a charter. So, going from the charter of 1898 to home rule in 1918, obviously, and then huge revisions in 64 and then et cetera.
Yeah.
I think being able to put, I don't know, substance or voice behind, the totality of what we're trying to do at any one election time is important. And so I vote yes for doing the entire charter in a few years. If we keep working at this, and we'll have to have more sessions, but
Okay. That's what I have to say.
So what the committee is interested is moving forward is all of the budget BOE stuff, biennial audits from the comptroller, the overly prescriptive provisions, Board of Finance, minor privileges, and then audit timing.
The budget, I mean, the thing is that we are also I think what the chair was saying, that this, if we're looking at Board of Estimates, we have to then look at budget timing as well as, like, there's some things that can be grouped together as a result because it's together.
But is that a 26 thing? Like,
Yes.
do we feel
Yeah.
like we're going to do that in 20? You all, or you want to do that in
I think
26?
I think
I think we're-
procurement is also a 26 thing because it's kind of emergent in terms of.
It's included in the budget BOE mayor. I'm talking about this. I've tried to give you this document here to organize the grouping of these topics into a small number of proposals. Budget BOE mayor, that's one. Comptroller, that's another. Executive, that's the one that we just went through, Article 7. And franchises, that's the other one we just went through, 8. So I've tried to group everything here into 4 proposals. I've gone through 2 of them. I've given you the mayor component of the budget BOE mayor. I need to incorporate that into the other separate document that I have for budget BOE. I will give that all to you in a consolidated form very shortly. And then I've given you nothing about comptroller and biennial audits because it is so simple conceptually. Repeal the biennial audits portion from the controller section and allow it to be put into code. It's that simple. I haven't bothered to spend my time putting
Right,
a
and
document
I think that we
together.
agreed on those too, so that we
Yes.
can move forward on those.
So those are the things. Those are the things that when we go out and do public outreach, I know I will be talking about as the things that we have talked about here and put on the table as the highest priorities and the things. I'm not going to go into our public outreach sessions and talk about all of the other things that we've talked about. These are the things that we've been talking about here and will likely be the work of this committee. So again, to Councilman Blanchard's point, my intention here today was to have some constructive discussion and a review of something that we had not yet given time to. The next session that we have will be giving constructive review in the same manner to the budget BOE mayor document that I'll share around. Is that cool? That's it. We're done for the day. Bang.